Hi, I'm Chula Beauregard, and I'm one of the artists at the Broadmoor Galleries in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I wanted to introduce you to my studio. Uh, I actually work a lot from nature, so I'll go out and do a study outside, and then I'll bring it in with a photograph and the study, and I'll create the finished piece. So actually behind me you'll see the photograph on my computer screen, and then the larger finished piece here on my easel, and then I'll also be using, like I said, the field study that I do. So I wanted to introduce a couple different pieces that I have there in the Broadmoor Gallery. One was called Ready to Ride, and this is a small study that I did just as a color study. I wanted to make sure that my palette was correct. I try to work with limited palette to create a lot of harmony in my pieces. So I wanted to make sure that I was getting that large red barn was my main focus. To tell you the story about Ready to Ride, that is my good friend Molly Fetcher, now Molly Lots. She lives on the Fetcher Ranch. John Fetcher was in the 10th Mountain Division, and he came to Steamboat in the 40s, built that big red barn, had a 300-acre cattle ranch, and then he founded the Steamboat Springs ski area, as many 10th Mountain Division people did. And he also created a few dams in the area for recreation and water use, so he certainly had an impact here locally. But his granddaughter continues to run the ranch, and it's my pleasure to be able to paint out there on a regular basis. I also wanted to tell you about the painting Royal Spirit. This is actually pretty academic painting, even though it looks contemporary. It was a mount that my husband got from an elk when he was archery hunting here in the area. He got that 6-point, I think, or 7-point elk. It's huge. And we had it up in our house, and I was really studying the lines and how beautiful the antlers were. So I wanted to honor the strength of that creature, the elk that are here in the Yampa Valley. But I also wanted to make it a more contemporary approach. So I have a lot of layering of paint, a lot of texture, and again, I have that limited palette. The other neat thing about that painting is underneath it all, I have this bronze flake that I mixed with an oil painting medium and put it on the whole canvas to start. So parts of the bronze will show through, plus the limited palette with a lot of neutrals and a lot of different mark making. In that way it's contemporary, but because I was looking at the mount while I painted, it's actually a still life. It has direct light source, and I'm looking at the object while I'm painting it. So it was kind of a cool combination of the contemporary approach with letting paint be paint, but also the more classical approach, which is having a still life in your studio and studying things from observation. The last piece I want to talk about is called First Light on the Elk River. And this actually started from the Steamboat Art Museum plein air event. I went out early in the morning when the light was coming from the divide, coming up from the east, just barely reaching over the Great Divide and reaching the very first cottonwoods that are sitting on the side of Elk River. When that happens, everything else is dark, and there's this intense light striking in the distance. It's one of my very favorite motifs because it really shows those contrasts of light and shadow. And I have the study from that day, being down there. It was rather cold. I kind of had to get down the steep hillside, set up my easel kind of on a real steep bank. It wasn't easy, but nobody said plein air painting was easy. But I then used those color notes plus the photos I took that day to create First Light. And I was really happy with it because I was able to more explore the texture of the river and letting the paint get really, really thick with brushwork. So again, the process almost becomes more important to me in the end but I'm also relying on the classical techniques of light and shadow, cool colors receding in the distance, the warm tones coming forward, and all those classical techniques that we learned a long time ago that have somehow been lost in more of the abstract art movement. But I do like to bring back those classical tools because they are tried and true, and yet still acknowledge that we are in a contemporary world and we can do things differently. And that's where that thick paint comes in, a lot of texture and a lot of unity on the piece to create more of a contemporary flat feeling with depth. So always looking for that balance between the modern and the traditional, the contemporary and the classical. To me, that's really important. And as part of my collection there at the Broadmoor Galleries, I am also showing a couple pieces that I did do in the field that somehow, sometimes you get lucky and you're standing on the side of the road and you're painting an old truck or you're painting the river and the light is right and you've got the focus and there's not too many bugs and you're actually able to create a finished piece in the field. And those small pieces are also available. So I have the water truck piece and also some around the Elk River. And those two have a lot of life in them, just as every time those field studies have so much life to them because I am there. I am using this environment around me and I'm trying to create it on this flat little piece of linen. So it does have a certain resonance to it. It's just that sometimes it works out as a finished piece and sometimes you need to then, finesse it into a larger studio piece. But those small ones, they were the lucky ones that are finished paintings in the field and have a lot of spirit to them. So thanks so much for visiting here in my studio. I'm up in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, but I really look forward to coming down to the Broadmoor this summer. I'll be there July 17th, 18th, that weekend for their plein air event. I can't wait to meet everyone in person. Feel free to come by, say hi, and we can talk more about art.